Hell's Gate. The town of Ashwood was falling apart. Buildings cracked, the ground shook, and the sky turned blood red. Ember Blackwood stood in the center of it all, her eyes glowing like fire. Her dark power spread, twisting the town into something evil. Shadows moved on their own, and strange whispers filled the air. Ethan and Father Thomas hurried to the old church, holding the ancient book. It contained the only ritual that could stop Ember, but they needed time to perform it. Time they did not have. Clara stood in front of Ember, breathing heavily. She had just learned the truth. She was part of Ember's bloodline. The evil that ran through Ember's veins also ran through hers. But unlike Ember, Clara had a choice. She could fight it. "You can't stop me," Ember said, her voice echoing through the town. "You are one of us, Clara. Accept it. Join me." Clara shook her head. "No, I will never be like you." Ember smiled. "Then you will die with the rest of them." With a flick of her hand, a wave of dark energy rushed toward Clara. She barely dodged it, rolling to the side. The energy hit a building behind her, turning it into dust. Ember was too powerful. The final stand. Ethan and Father Thomas reached the church and ran inside. They placed the ancient book on the altar and lit the sacred candles. The words of the ritual were written in Latin. Father Thomas began to read, his voice strong and steady. Outside, Ember felt the power of the ritual. She screamed in rage. "No, I will not be banished again." Clara saw Ember's fear and knew this was their chance. She picked up a broken iron rod from the ground and ran toward Ember. She swung it with all her strength, hitting Ember's arm. Ember hissed in pain, but it wasn't enough. "You cannot fight me, child," Ember growled. "Your blood makes you weak." Clara clenched her fists. "No, my blood gives me the power to stop you." She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. She could feel the connection between them, the dark energy inside her. But she focused on something else, the love she had for her town, her friends, and the people who had protected her. She would not let Ember win. The ultimate sacrifice. Inside the church, Father Thomas and Ethan finished the first part of the ritual. The air grew heavy. A strange light started to form above the altar. The ritual was working, but Ember was still too strong. "She's resisting," Ethan said, fear in his voice. "We need more power." Father Thomas looked at him. "The ritual requires a willing sacrifice." Ethan's eyes widened. "You mean—" Before he could finish, the doors of the church flew open. Clara stood there, her face pale but determined. "I'll do it," she said. Ethan stepped forward. "No, Clara, there has to be another way." Clara shook her head. "If I don't do this, Ember will win. She will destroy everything." She walked to the altar and placed her hands on the book. The moment she did, a surge of energy flowed through her. Her body glowed with golden light. She could feel Ember's power trying to pull her back, but she pushed forward. Outside, Ember screamed in pain. Her body flickered like a dying flame. The ground shook harder, and the shadows around her began to vanish. "No!" Ember cried. "You can't do this!" Clara looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "Goodbye, Ethan." With one final word, the ritual completed. A burst of light shot out from the church, covering the entire town. Ember let out a final ear-piercing scream before her body shattered into dust. The sky cleared, the ground stopped shaking, and the shadows disappeared. Ashwood was safe. A new dawn. The townspeople slowly came out of hiding, looking around in shock. The nightmare was over. The buildings stood strong again, the streets were calm, and the air felt lighter. Ethan ran to the altar, his heart pounding, but Clara was still there. She was alive. She opened her eyes and gasped, I thought I was going to die." Father Thomas smiled. "You were willing to make the sacrifice. That is why the ritual spared you." Tears filled Ethan's eyes as he helped Clara to her feet. "You did it," he said. "You saved us." Clara looked around. Ember was gone. The darkness was gone. She had broken the curse. As the sun rose over Ashwood, the people cheered. They had survived. They had won. But as they celebrated, a cold wind blew through the town. In the distance, deep in the forest, a pair of glowing red eyes flickered for just a moment before vanishing into the shadows.